Okay, it's time for another prototype build. I started this one months and months and months ago. I actually talked about it in a post on my forum. And what it is, as it says in the title of the video, it's an automatic sharpening system for the bandsaw. Now what I have here is still a very rough kind of, proof of concept thing that I made, like I say, months ago. I dug it out, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add the rest of the components to it so that it actually works. And I originally tried this on a blade that had fewer teeth per inch, but I'm not going to cheap out on this one. I'm going to go with this blade right here, which I think is around 8 teeth per inch, maybe even 10. No, I think it's around 8. Anyways, it's got a lot of teeth, so it'll be a good test for this. The first thing that I've got to do here is actually cut this thing down in size. It's too big. So I'll bring it over to the chop saw, and well, first thing I see is I've got a nail sticking out the back there that I've got to cut off. I'll be right back. All right, worth mentioning that once again, this is not going to be an overly edited video. I'm going to leave a lot of this stuff in here, mainly to show what's involved in doing this kind of thing. I know a lot of people take it for granted that, these ideas just pop out of the, stratosphere or something, and then, gremlins come out here to the workshop and work out all the details. It's not the case. It takes a lot of time to get one of these builds to the point where you can actually, put it in a video, and say even make plans for it. Making plans for it would take even longer. I'm going to trim this off. And then I'm going to trim off the other end as well. And I'm going to try to cut that piece too. And the best way to do that is to put something in behind it to back it, or not cut it actually at all on the saw because it's dangerous. I'll just cut the plywood, and then I'll cut that with the bandsaw. Okay, that's a more reasonable size right here. Once again, this is just a proof of concept type thing. This wouldn't be the actual final mechanism. This is just in the same way that I did the belt sander for the lathe. I'm working out this in the physical world. I can do it with SketchUp. It takes longer, and you don't see specific problems. Like there's a lot of geometry here that has to work. And if you do it on paper, sure, it looks like it works on paper. But when you go to build it, then it's a different story. It may not work as well as you planned. So I got that. Next thing I need to do is make the base that actually clamps down to the bandsaw here, that this thing will slide back and forth in. This part is actually stationary. It will stay in place and lever the blade up per tooth. But the part that has the Dremel tool that will actually do the sharpening will move back and forth. Okay, I went over to my wood thing, and I found a piece of plywood scrap to use as the base. The base will be clamped down to the top, like I said, but it needs a slot cut in it roughly halfway or in the middle. I think maybe it should be off to one side a little bit, and that would be better. So something like that, and that will come, say if it's flush with the edge here, that will come to where the back of the blade stops. That's so you can slide this thing in place and then set up the rest of it on top. Right? This part will be attached to that. So now I see a problem. See, this is the kind of thing you don't see immediately on paper, although I would have realized after, and I might have realized it at the time. I started designing this thing after I came up with this here in SketchUp, but I stopped. Too many other things going on. And so I was probably aware of this at the time, but I might have forgotten about it. Maybe the slot is actually from the end here and not to the front. I can't see a reason. Okay, well, there'd be stuff here. There's got to be a way to see. This is the problem right here. This has to go inside there like this. And you know what I think what I did was I moved in my build, my design in SketchUp, I moved these parts that contact the blade to the outside of this so that the blade wouldn't have to go inside here. I think that's what it was. And then everything could slide ahead, slide in from behind here and just go right in place. I think that's the way it was. I'd have to go and look. And maybe that's what I should do. I'll quickly go in and look at the SketchUp drawing, and then I'll know for sure what I was thinking. Well, I did go in and I did look, and I discovered that I didn't actually see that in my original design in SketchUp. I got too much shit in the way here. Anyway, I did come up with a very simple solution though, and that's to notch it out like that. So it just slides right in like that. I've already attached this part after I cut it a little bit shorter. Okay, I'm down on my knees here. I've got the thing clamped down in place. Now this upper one here, imagine there's a pin over here to stop it from coming down any further. And what that does is it stops the blade from dropping any further. It's almost like a ratcheting action. This one over here, you can see it kind of moves up like that. There's going to be a ramp attached to the part that the Dremel is attached to, and the ramp will lift this up like this and then push it up one tooth, and you can see it locks back in place there. And so after it pushes up, that's pulling it back. You pull back the Dremel tool and it ratchets that up, and then you go ahead with it and you sharpen the tooth up here somewhere. Now, I think that this can be made a lot more compact than this. Like I say, this is a proof of concept, and I just wanted to see how it would work, but that's basically it right there. You can see. And so for each cycle, you'll pull it back, it'll lift the blade, one tooth, push it ahead, it'll sharpen the tooth, pull it back, it'll lift the blade again, push it ahead, it'll sharpen the next tooth down, and so on and so forth until the entire blade is sharpened. So a while ago, I made this simple thing right here, and what that does, you operate it manually, basically. It holds the Dremel in here at an angle, the correct angle that matches the front slope of the tooth, and then you push it back and forth. You bring it in and touch the tooth with it, and it'll sharpen it, pull it back out, and then you manually raise or lower the blade to the next tooth. This works great, but I don't know, it's not as impressive as it could be, or as impressive as an automatic one would be. So the next thing I've got to do, I wanted to use this, but I can't. The next thing I've got to do is rig up the carriage that holds the Dremel at that angle, and then that'll slide back and forth on the top of the base here. And I'll just add wings on the side here that stick up a little bit so that it can't move back and forth. The objective is to have it at the right angle and also come in dead center of the blade. All right, so what I've done here is I've cut this piece of 1/4 inch plywood, and that's the base for the carriage, and that fits in there. The important part of this is that it's the same or just slightly less than the width of the base here, so that it can slide freely back and forth and can be guided by the base. Also, it has to be L-shaped like that because the upright that holds the Dremel will be over here, whereas the wedge that actually lifts up this arm will be over here. So that has to be underneath the arm right there, and I'm add a little wedge at the end there. That's something that I need to work out. I'll probably have to do that 3 or 4 times to get the right geometry so that I get the right action. The idea is that you shouldn't have to move it back very far to lift the blade up one tooth, especially a fine tooth blade like this. You should be able to move it back maybe a ½ inch, and it will lift that right up, and then you go forwards with your Dremel. So at no time is the Dremel very far from the face of the blade like that. While I'm here, I'm going to show you a little trick on how to measure something like a pipe or anything round like that that's difficult to measure if you don't have calipers that will fit on there. I've got calipers, but they won't reach to the center there, I don't think. Anyway, here's an easier way and just as accurate, really. I'm going to take my table saw here. I've got the blade lifted up about 3 inches, and I'm going to slide my fence over until it's just snug between the fence and the blade. And I'll look at my scale down here, and I see it's 1 7/8. So that's pretty much exactly how thick this body is. I've got the upright attached to the thing that slides back and forth on the carriage, and I'm just going to eyeball the angle here for the Dremel. I want to match it as close as possible to the angle on the tooth, and that looks like it's about it. I'm just going to roughly mark it on here. Just that'll just give me more or less a guideline. I'll leave space in there so I can, move it back and forth like that and fine tune it. Okay, since this is still an experimental build, I don't see the point in fabricating parts for this right here. I just took it from my old one, wherever that is, and it's just 2 blocks like this and that metal strap up on top that keeps the Dremel clamped in place. Now this Dremel is not the one that I originally used for that. It's got these things that stick out on the side here for the access to the bushings or the brushes. Not bushings, brushes. If I leave that, somebody will be correcting me. Oh no, not somebody, but about 1 million people will be correct. Well, it's not actually bushes, it's brushes. Anyway, so I'm going to go ahead and screw that on, following that angle that I already established. It's going to start the screws in place. And then what I'll do is I'll slip the tool in and then tighten the screws so it tightens down on this. I may have to add a shim in there to keep it absolutely straight. Okay, I did a couple more things here. I drove this screw in here, and that stops this from coming down too far. All right, so that holds the blade in a certain position. I also added the spring here. I actually put it over here first, but I found that it was a little bit too strong, and it's still too strong actually. And originally I had this operating by weight only, and I think that maybe that's the best thing to do, because what happens now is when I go to lever the blade up, rather than pushing that spring up, which really doesn't take a lot of effort, because there's such a huge mechanical advantage here, it's actually pushing the blade backwards a little bit so that it's not moving that up at all. And the problem is it doesn't click back in. So I thought about adding a block up above to keep the blade from moving back, and that may work, but I've also tried it, and what happens is the blade actually stays above where it needs to come down to. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that spring again, and I think the solution that I'm going to use for that will be just gravity. Maybe I'll make the end of this heavier in some way. Okay, I did a few more things. I did get the wedge glued on. I glued on one before this actually, and it was too small. It was this one right here. That doesn't push it up high enough or aggressively enough. So took that off and I put this one on after I made that. That's better. That one works. I also added a guide block on the other side there. It doesn't really work well because this part of the carriage is considerably less than the base, so it moves around a little bit too much. It really should be a closer fit. I also added an adjustable stop right here. This is very important. This stops the Dremel from going too far and over sharpening, so you get consistent results with every pass. And I had a screw in the back here. I had to remove it anyway because it was interfering with this ramp block here, but it wasn't really working as well as I wanted it to. So I added a bigger screw right here, and that's more weight, and it's in a better place actually too. So I'll just give you a quick demonstration. In the final build, there will be like a handle up here that you pull it back, push it ahead, pull it back, and push it ahead. But I'm just down here just to show you how it's going to work. And pull it back. You can see that this is riding up that ramp. The thing is about to engage in the tooth, and now it's touching the bottom of the tooth, and it's halfway up the ramp already. That's how much slack you need there. So even having this ramp a bit higher wouldn't hurt. But I don't think it will work as well with something like this if it's steeper. You could probably make it a lot steeper if this was a roller, like a bearing. So anyway, you keep going back and it lifts the blade up. And I've added a screw at the back here to stop it from going too far. And then when you come forward, what happens is this drops down again. And this thing comes ahead to sharpen the blade. I'm going to take the camera in for a better look at this. Okay, I made one last change. Okay, I added one last thing here, and that's a block inside here, right there. And that keeps the carriage from moving in that way, guides it better. So I think I'm ready to give it a try now. I'm going to turn it on and move the camera in position for a good look at it and see how it works. Okay, I gotta say I'm very happy with the way this is working. I thought originally that it would be a great, idea to motorize it somehow, to make it, do all this automatically. But it takes no effort at all to move that back and forth that small amount. Also, you can watch what's going on there. I did notice that in the beginning, I did skip a couple of teeth, and I think that has to do with, pulling it back a little bit too hard. Also, this mechanism is not ideal. Everything doesn't line up exactly the way it should, but for what it is, it really works well. I'm impressed. Looking at the blade here, it looks really good, and touching it, I can feel how sharp it is now. So I don't know how many teeth are on this blade, but I'm going to go ahead now and finish sharpening it with this so that at least it's all sharpened. I don't think it's a good idea to sharpen part of a blade and then use it I know I've used this blade quite a lot in the past, and it was fairly dull. It was burning through a lot of the cuts, but it won't be after this. Man, is that sharp. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for watching.